Hello students, I am your master, Mr.Shaikh MOHAMMED.ZUBAIR. Today we are going to study the fourth chapter in history, Maharashtra before the times of Shivaji Maharaj. Introduction. At the beginning of the 17th century CE, most of the territory in Maharashtra was under the control of Nizam Shah of Ahmednagar and Adil Shah of Bijapur. The Mughals had entered Khandesh. Their objective was to expand their power in the south. There were settlements of Siddhi people who had come from Africa along coastline of Konkan. The competition and conflict amongst the Portuguese, the British, the French, and the Dutch, who had come from Europe, was getting intense during this period. There was stiff competition amongst them to capture the markets for trade. The Portuguese had already established their rule in Goa and VII on the western coastline. The British, the Dutch, and the French had found an entry through the medium of trading companies by setting up factories. All these powers assessed the strength of other powers, kept themselves safe, and tried to dominate as much as possible. This conflict had created instability and insecurity in Maharashtra. These different people from Europe were called Topkar on the basis of their customary headgear. It is necessary to get acquainted with the village as Moja, Kasbah, and Paragana to understand the nature of settlements in that period, as also of the officers that formed a link between the rulers and their subjects, and also the markets and the craftsmen. Paragana was made up of many villages. Generally, the headquarters of a Paragana was called Kasbah. A village smaller than a Kasbah was called Moja. Let us get acquainted in brief with village, Kasbah, and Paragana respectively. Now we study about village or Moja in detail. These are the pictures of a village. Most of the people lived in villages. A village was also called Moja. The chief of the village was the Patil. He used to try to bring maximum land under cultivation. When there was any dispute in village, the Patil resolved it and made peace. A Kulkarni helped the Patil in his work. The Kulkarni kept the record of the revenue that was collected. There were various artisans in the village. They had hereditary rights regarding their occupation. The peasants gave a share of their agriculture produce to the artisans for the services they rendered to the village community. This share was known as baluta. Now we study about Kasbah. Let's see the picture. A Kasbah was like a big village. It was usually the headquarters of a Paragana. Example, Indapur, Kasbah of Indapur, Paragana. VII Kasbah of VII Paragana were the headquarters of those Paragana. Agriculture was the main occupation there. There were skilled artisans like carpenters, blacksmiths, etc. in a Kasbah. There was usually a market, that is Peth, adjacent to a Kasbah. Peth is also known as market. The Shete and Mahajan were the Watandars of the Peth. Every village did not necessarily have a Peth. The setting up of a Peth was the job of the Shetes and the Mahajans. For that they received some land from the government and some rights from the villagers. The Mahajan maintained the accounts of the Peth. Let's learn more about Paragana. Many villages together made a Paragana, but the number of villages was not the same in all Paraganas. For example, the Pune Paragana was a big Paragana. It consisted of 290 villages. There were 64 villages in the Chakan Paragana. The Shirwal Paragana was small. It had only 40 villages. The Deshmukh and the Deshpande were the Watandar officers of the Paragana. The Deshmukh was the chief of Patils in a Paragana. The Deshmukh did at the Paragana level what the Patil did at the village level. The Deshpande was the chief of all Kulkarnis in the Paragana. The Deshpande did at the Paragana level the work that Kulkarnis did at the village level. These Watandar officers were the link between the people and the government. In case of any invasion or drought, these Watandars represented the grievances of the people to the government. Sometimes these officers misused their powers. They collected more money from the people than was due or did not remit the money, so collected to the government in time. On such occasions, the people suffered harassment. Now we study about the calamity of a famine. Let's see some pictures. You can see the pictures of a famine that has taken place. Agriculture was dependent on rainwater. If it did not rain, crops would fail. The prices of food grains rose. It became difficult for the people to get food grains and other things. There was no fodder for the cattle. Water became scarce. It became difficult for people to live in the village. They were forced to leave the village. A famine was a great calamity for the people. A great famine occurred in Maharashtra in 1630 CE. People were greatly distressed due to this famine. It has been described in these words: People were ready to sell themselves for a piece of bhakri, but there was nobody to buy them. There was a severe scarcity of food grains. Entire families were destroyed. Cattle and farm animals also died. Agriculture was devastated. The famine put an end to industries. All financial transactions came to a standstill. People had to wander to faraway regions in search of a livelihood. It was a great challenge to bring back to normalcy the devastated life of the people. Normalcy means back to normal. The work of Warkari movement. We learn about some women sons. Sant Chokobar's wife, Sant Soirabai, and sister Sant Nirmalabai, Sant Muktabai, Sant Janabai, Sant Kanhopatra, Sant Bahinabai Siyurkar and other women were among them. Pandharpur was at the center of Sant movement. Vitthal was the object of their worship. Picture of Lord Vitthal. On the banks of the river Chandrabhaga, which is at Pandharpur, the sons and pilgrims, that is Warkari, used to rejoice in their devotion, bhakti. There, equality was propagated through bhajans, kirtans, and unity meals, that is kala. We study about Sant Namdeo. He was a great sant of the Warkari movement. He was a skilled organizer. He performed excellent kirtans as well. He awakened the sense of equality in men and women belonging to all castes through the medium of kirtans. His pledge was Nachu Kirtanache Rangi Gyandeep Lavu Jagi. His Abhanga compositions are well known. Many sons as well as common people were influenced by his teachings. He went up to Punjab to propagate his thoughts. His compositions are included in the Guru Granth Sahib of Sikhs. He propagated the message of Bhagwat religion in all quarters. He built a memorial to Sant Chokhamela at Pandharpur. His work is unforgettable. Next we study about Sant Jnaneshwar. He was a great sant in the Warkari movement. He wrote the Bhavarth Deepika or Jnaneshwari, which elucidates the meaning of the Sanskrit Bhagavad Gita. He also composed the Amrutanubhav. He preached the importance of the path of devotion through his works and compositions. He showed a simple way of worship and conduct which the common people could follow easily. He gave the prestige of a religion to the Warkari movement. Though his life was spent in extremely adverse circumstances, he never lost the calm of his mind and never harbored bitterness. His Pasayadan in Jnaneshwari uplifts the mind. The poetic compositions of his brothers Sant Nivruttinath and Sant Sopandev and sister Muktabai are well known. Next we learn about Sant Eknath. He was a great sant of the Bhakti movement in Maharashtra. His compositions are many and diverse. They include Abhanga, Gavalana, Barud, etc. He has stated Bhagavad Dharma in detail and in a simple manner. He has portrayed people's life in Bhavarth Ramayana through the story of Ram. He explained in Marathi the Bhakti part of the Sanskrit work Bhagavad. His Abhangas show the warmth of devotion. He demonstrated through his own conduct that there is no need to renounce worldly matters for attaining the highest truth, Paramarth. He was a teacher of the people in the true sense of the term. He believed that our Marathi language was inferior to no other language. He asked the Sanskrit scholars forcefully, Sanskrit Vani Deve Keli, Tari Prakrut Kai Chorapasuni Zali? He heavily criticized those who hated other religions. Next we study about Sant Tukaram. He belonged to Dehu near Pune. His compositions or abhangas are very pleasing and lucid, that means easy, reaching the greatest poet heights. His gatha is a precious treasure of the Marathi language. He asks us to find God by showing love to the unhappy and the tormented in the following lines. जे का रंजले गांजले त्यासी मने जो आपुले तोची साधू ओळखावा देव तेतेची जाणावा. With this viewpoint, he threw in the river Indrayani the documents of the loans that people had borrowed from him and freed many poor families from the bonds of loan. He criticized the hypocrisy. What do you mean by hypocrisy? It is a behavior in which somebody pretends to have moral standards or opinions that he or she does not have. And superstition in the society in very strong terms. He stressed that devotion or bhakti should be coupled with morality. His teachings can be summed up as Jodo niya dhan uttam vyavare udas vichare vech kari. Some people opposed the social awakening that he had undertaken and sank his abhangas in the Indrayani. Sant Tukaram faced the opposition with noble courage. Sant Tukaram's disciples and associates were of different castes and creeds. They include Navji Mali, Governor Shetwani, Santaji Jagnade, Shivba Kasar, Bahinabai Surkar, and Mahadaji Pant Kulkarni. An important task completed by Gangaram Pant Maval and Santaji Jagnade was writing down the abhangas of Sant Tukaram. Let's learn about the work of sants. Sants gave the message of equality to people. They taught humanity. They preached that people should live together in harmony, unity, and love. Their work resulted in social awakening. They taught how to live in the face of foreign invasions, drought-like situations, or any other natural calamities. Their teachings proved to be a big support for people. Their work created self-confidence among the people of Maharashtra. There was a deterioration of ethics and religion in the society. At such a time, the sons came forward to protect the society. They taught the true meaning of religion. They showed the path of devotion by living amongst people and sharing their joys and sorrows. Some orthodox and dogmatic people opposed them. But the sons believed that facing this opposition was a part of their duty. Sant Tukaram has explained the mark of a true sant in these words. Tuka mane tochi sant, soshi jagache aghat. The sons elucidated the complex dharma of the scholars, that is Shastris and Pandits, in the language of the people. They prayed to God using simple everyday terms. They took the view that all are equal before God. They taught society to do away with the pride arising out of caste and varna and see everyone as God's children. A characteristic of the sons was that they did not forget their duties on the path of devotion. They found God in their work. Sant Sauta said, Kanda Mura Bhaji, Avgi Vithai Mazi. This statement refers to farm work but applies to work in all walks of life. The sons carried on with their duties even as they were engaged in devotion, teaching, and composing verses. They developed the moral sensibilities of the society. Now we study about Ramdas Swami. He was from Jamb in Marathwada. He explained the importance of physical fitness to the people. Maratha Tituka Medwawa, Maharashtra Dharm Vadwawa. This message of Ramdas Swami is famous. He gave practical education and lessons in good conduct through his works like Das Bodh, Karunashtaka, and Manache Shlok. He stated the importance of people's movement and organization and founded the Samarth Sampradaya. Chafal was the center of Sampradaya. He propagated the worship of Ram and Hanuman. He traveled far and wide to propagate his thoughts. Lastly, we study about the inspiration for independence during foreign rule. Such was the political, social, and cultural situation, etc. in Maharashtra before the times of Shivaji Maharaj. In that period, Maharashtra was under the control of Adil Shahi and other powers. It was not independent. Even so, some personalities and streams of thought were dreaming of freedom. Among them, Shahaji Maharaj, who is considered to be a visionary of Swaraj, was on the forefront. This is a picture of Shahaji Maharaj. Children, this is an exercise which you are supposed to do in your history notebook as homework. Once the school reopens, the respective subject teachers will take your books for corrections. Please see that you complete all your given assignments before the school reopens, and also try to write answers in your own words. I hope by this presentation you have understood the chapter easily. Thank you, children, and God bless.